Hello all. In this video, we'll be talking about government entity. Government entity comes under article number 5 of the Corporate Tax UAE. So let's go and see what are there in the slides. Now, what are the government entities in the UAE? Government entities are the federal government, the local government departments of the federal or local government agencies of the federal government or local government, authorities and public institutions of the federal government or local government. Now, let's see what are the examples. I've listed few examples of the government entities in the UAE. Now, these are only the few examples. Now, there may be many other government entities in the UAE. Just for understanding's sake, I have listed few examples. Now, Dubai Chamber, Central Bank of the UAE, Abu Dhabi Department of Economic Development, Dubai Airport Free Zone, Abu Dhabi Ports, Dubai Department of Culture under Sharjah Emirate, Department of Economic Development under Queen, and many more. These are a few examples of the government entities in the UAE. Now, government entities are automatically exempted. In the sense, they don't need to register for corporate tax, they don't need to file any taxable returns, and they don't need to file any application or election in order to be exempted. If it is a government entity, they are automatically exempted and they don't have to worry about the corporate tax. So I have listed 4 points over here. So let's read the points one by one. Government entities are generally exempted from corporate tax. This is what I told before. It is internationally accepted that government entities are outside the scope of corporate tax. Now, be it in the UAE or any other country, the respective government companies in the respective countries, they're automatically exempted from corporate tax, or for that matter, any other tax. Right? So it is internationally accepted that the government entities are outside the scope of corporate tax insofar as they conduct activities that are an extension or part of the government sovereign and public function equally. Now, the third point, government entities are automatically qualified for an exemption without needing to be listed in a cabinet decision or having to submit an application to the authority. Fourth point, government entities exempt from the application of the corporate tax law. This is what I told before. They don't have to file any application or an election in order to be exempted. Once they've been identified as government entity, they are automatically exempted. This means that unless specifically provided otherwise in the corporate tax law or any implementing decision issued there under, a government entity would not have any registration obligation under the corporate tax law. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Now, when a government entity will be subject to corporate tax? If a government entity, if any of the entities conducts a business, okay, and conducts a business, that entity will be exposed to the corporate tax, will be subject to corporate tax registration. So the first point says a government entity shall be subject to corporate tax if it conducts a business or business activity under a license issued by a licensing authority. Means nothing but a trade license. If any of the government entity, and if it's one of the entities or more than one entities does a business, those entities will be subject to the corporate tax. Second point, any business or business activity conducted by a government entity under license issued by a licensing authority shall be treated as an independent business. Okay, so those entities will be treated as independent business, and they can't be mixed with the government entity operations. And the entity will be subject to the corporate tax in relation to that licensed business or business activity and will be required to register for corporate tax. So this is what I told before. Third point, now those entities need to maintain separate financial statements. So that means, so as I have told earlier in many other videos, once you are exposed to the corporate tax, so that means you need to follow the standard accounting, the accounting standard, which is IFRS. Now, if your business revenue in a year exceeds 50 million, that means you will have to follow the full IFRS. If your business does not exceed 50 million revenue, then it is optional. Then you may follow IFRS for SMEs. It is mandatory if your revenues are more than 50 million, then you'll have to maintain an audited financial statement. If it is less than 50 million, then it becomes again an optional. Again, when you're following IFRS, then accrual basis of accounting is must. If your revenues are less than 3 million, then you can go and elect for small business relief. And then once you've elected for small business relief, you can follow the cash basis of accounting instead of accrual basis of accounting. Fourth point says the government entity shall calculate the taxable income for its business or business activity of the article independently for each tax period in accordance with the provisions of the decree law. Fifth point, the transaction between the business or business activity of this article. So if there are any transactions between the entities, they should follow the arm's length principles or the related party transaction subject to the provisions of the Article 34. Now, there'll be a different video under Article 34. Okay, and when we talk about arm's length principle or related party transaction, that's a big chapter that we will speak about. So for now, just remember, if there is any transactions between the entities, then you will have to definitely follow the arm's length principle or the related party transactions. Now, finally, if many of the entities under the government entity, if they do business, then all of the entities can come together and form a tax group. So the last point says a government entity may apply to the authority for all of its businesses and business activities to be treated as a single taxable person tax group for the purpose of this decree law, subject to the meeting the conditions to be prescribed to the ministerial decision 68 of 2023. So you can go and refer this ministerial decision 68 of 2023 online. Now, can the business of federal government and local government be combined as a single taxable person? There are certain set of rules. If you will have to combine the business of federal government and local government. So let's read the points one by one. The ability for a federal or a local government entity to consolidate its taxable businesses for corporate tax purposes is subject to the conditions that have been specified in Ministerial Decision number 68 of 2023 on the treatment of all businesses and business activity conducted by a government entity as a single taxable person. Now, let's see what the conditions are. Now, whatever this Ministerial Decision number 68 2023, the conditions talks, I have listed the conditions over here, right? So the first condition is the application should include all of the taxable businesses and business activity of the federal government or the local government entity. Now, you can't exclude any of the entities. If you want to form a tax group, then all of the entities should come together, be it under federal government or a local government. Business and business activity of the federal government entities or the local government entities should be conducted under a license issued by a licensing authority, right? So we are talking about the trade license over here. Second point. The federal government or the local government will be required to nominate a federal government entity or a local government entity to act as a representative for the federal government or the local government, respectively. So basically, a representative either from a federal government, in the sense, if the entities are coming under the federal government, a representative of the federal government should be appointed, or if the entities are falling under the local government, a representative of the local government should be appointed to deal with the FTA. This representative will be responsible for making the application to the authority. So that means what application? Be it forming a tax group or be it any entity leaving the tax group, that representative will be dealing with the FTA. To be treated as a single taxable person, the corporate tax compliance and payment obligation of all respective taxable business and business activities. And the third point, in the case of the local government entity, the application can only cover those business activities that are conducted within the same emirate. Right? So, where an application has been approved by the authority to consolidate the taxable businesses or business activity of the federal government entity or a local government entity, Any new business or business activity conducted by the same federal or local government entity that meets the required conditions will be treated as being part of the same taxable person. Okay. Now, what are the accounting standards to be followed by the government entity? And those entities which conducts a business, obviously the government entity doesn't have to follow the accounting standard, which is IFRS, because they are exempted from the corporate tax. Now, where you need to follow the accounting standards? Where the entities are conducting the business. So when we say the accounting standard is IFRS. So is what let's see the points. A government entity under the corporate tax law may use other accounting standards, right? This is what we spoke about a little while ago. Second point, when a government entity conducts a business under a license issued by the licensing authority and are treated as a separate taxable business as per the corporate tax law, the government entity is required to use IFRS or IFRS SMEs to prepare the financial statements for the taxable activity. Now, let's see an example of a government entity. A government entity established in the UAE. Ministry M is a government entity in the UAE and is part of the federal government. See, it's part of the federal. The example can also be a part of a local government, but I've mentioned as a federal government. Ministry M does not undertake a business under a license. So that means what? It is automatically exempted. It does not have to go and register itself for corporate tax. It is exempted. It is automatically exempted. It does not have to go and file an application or do an election. If it does not conduct a business, and if it is a government entity, it is automatically exempted. The last point, a government entity will automatically be exempted from corporate tax as long as it does not conduct a business under a license. A ministry M is part of the federal government. It will not be required to register for corporate tax. Thank you for watching.